Who sucks last? Stephen Thrill, you bring us 3 stories from the news each and every week. They always suck. However, it's up to us to determine out of those 3 stories, which one sucks the least. Now, if you happen to like the Men's Room on Facebook or follow us on X and Instagram at Men's Room Live, the debate is already underway on Who Sucks Less.
Yeah, and like I said at the top of the show, all 3 stories inevitably kind of involve the medical industry. You know, whether people are taking drugs, stealing money, etc., etc. But let's just get underway. So we go to India, where a man has been accused of denying his wife penicillin when she was ill, which led to her death, while later accepting medicine for his own illness, thus saving his own life. All right, so she just needed penicillin. This is not some crazy, like, snake antivenom. This is penicillin. He denies her penicillin. She dies. A little bit later, he has a different illness. They're like, hey, we have a medication. He's like, oh, yeah, absolutely. Bring it on. Now, in addition to allowing his wife to die, in spite of the medication being available, he's also accused of mistreatment of women, which included his own teenage nieces. Apparently, he slept with several of them to, quote, test his celibacy. That was his quote, to test his celibacy. But he didn't stop with his nieces. The man also conducted controversial experiments that involved sharing his bed naked with other young women and girls to, again, test his self-control. We never got the results on how well he did on that. Now, these acts have been widely described as abusive and exploitative because they are. He was also a devout and unapologetic racist. Anyway, turns out he was also shot and killed. I guess wow. That's a happy ending. Yeah, this guy. So that's his story.
So he's just not a good person.
It seems that way. Actually, we stay in India for story number 2, where a woman is facing harsh criticism for creating what some are calling a cult of death. Now, the accusations stem from her allegedly prioritizing a cult of suffering over adequate medical care in her hospices. She operates a series of hospices in different countries around the world. Sounds kind on the surface, but she's accused of accepting money from questionable sources like dictators and then potentially misusing those funds despite massive donations. Critics pointed to poor conditions, lack of diagnosis, and unnecessary pain relief in her facilities. In other words, she's suspected of using her donations for personal benefit instead of investing in hospice facilities. Now, despite huge donations, her clients often lack, they say, basic hygiene, proper diagnosis, and sufficient pain relief, with critics claiming she viewed suffering as spiritually valuable. That was her explanation. Now, millions of donations were reportedly not effectively used for patient care, with some questioning where the money went. Now, critics argue she glorified suffering, promoting a view that suffering was good rather than alleviating. It also saved a lot of money, none of which has actually been tracked down. Again, she passed away of natural causes at the age of 87. And then finally, closer to home, we go to New Jersey, where a man was fired from his job as a nurse after 16 years in the industry. He's accused of stealing drugs from the hospital. So a co-worker found medication vials in a disposal bin. The drugs were not valuable outside of the hospital, and since they were not used for recreational drug use, the hospital launched an investigation and found that he'd been stealing medications, and he was fired. Now, before his medical career, he'd been a petty officer second class as part of the team that operated the Poseidon missiles aboard the submarine, the USS Woodrow Wilson. And after serving our country, he went to nursing school and then worked at various hospitals in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. He's worked at the burn units, coronary care, the intensive care unit, where he received the Employee Award, cardiac care, and finally the critical care of the Somerset Medical Center in Somerset, New Jersey. It was there that he was, in fact, busted for stealing the drugs that actual patients needed for their care. So those are your 3 stories. We have the guy in India who, at the jump, denied medication for his wife, which led to her death, accepted medication for him, which led to his continued life. And this is the guy who, the mistreatment of women, including sleeping with his 2 teenage nieces, again, to test his celibacy, was his excuse. And then didn't stop there. We have the woman in India. She runs hospices around the world. But basically, she was getting a lot of donations because it sounds good on the surface, but misappropriating the funds, and no one's sure where the money went, but it did not go to the hospices. And then finally, the guy who possibly had been stealing drugs for 16 years, but certainly in the last 3 years of his profession as a nurse in New Jersey. Wow.
So he's just stealing them to steal them.
As far as, because
there's no recreational,
they're not
opiates.
Use for them. No. That's why it just seemed weird to them. Like, this is worth investigating. You could probably pick out a drug addict. You know, taking opiates, you could probably figure out who's taking them. But in this case, they're like, there's no recreational value to these. But fired nevertheless, because you still can't steal the drugs that patients need at a hospital.
I mean, that almost seems worse. at least like somebody, like you shouldn't be stealing medication from anybody.
But you understand
At
an
least the addict, I go,
You're addicted.
all right, they're addicted. They're feeding it, like just stealing medication, like a blood pressure pill from somebody just to let them suffer seems awful.
Mm-hmm.
And the pain relief ones he wasn't taking on his own?
Not as far as I know. It was
Okay.
not indicated
All right.
in the article.
I'll tell you what, I'll give you credit. We haven't had this one. It's very tough to pick any of them.
Yeah.
I know it's always the game, but today I'm like, Jesus.
Well, the guy in India is a scumbag, obviously. The guy that killed his wife.
Let his wife die. He
And
did
then
not kill
what he
her.
did with his nieces. He got his, though, in the end. Probably just for being a douche. But that's pretty bad. I don't know the numbers on the woman in India, but the fact that they labeled those hospices as a cult of death.
That was the nickname given. Obviously,
And they're
she
all
did
around
not
the
call
world,
them that.
and they're multiple locations.
Yeah.
Lacking basic hygiene, proper diagnosis,
And getting a lot of money and donations.
and pain relief and all that stuff. To me, just based on what I would assume to be the numbers of people affected, I think that one sucks the most.
Okay.
Just because of the numbers. Now we know the guy in India, he sucks pretty bad. In this case, I guess I got to go, Ted, with the nurse in New Jersey, because death is not involved in this. Patients were in pain. That's horrible. But just trying to measure the three stories up against each other, I'm going to go with the nurse in New Jersey.
Do we know if the woman in India, was she like pocketing the money?
Nobody's quite sure. That's the assumption, but like anything, you got $1 million donation, 10 for your hospice that you own, Ted. 10,000 went to the hospice, 990,000 is missing. I don't know that you pocketed it, but there seemed to be no paper trail.
It didn't go to the hospital.
To be right.
Or the hospices.
Which is what the donation was for. So maybe, who knows? Maybe she invested in Bitcoin, but it didn't make it to the intended
Or
target.
bought a vacation home or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough one. Again,
And she's passed away as well.
Yes.
but at least I can figure out her reasoning, which is just
Greed.
She's right, greed. Which again isn't like being an addict stealing pills, but I could fathom like, all right, she's greedy, she's just stealing this money, she's not actually helping people. The guy in India, like we said, obviously a scumbag, terrible human being. I just can't get over this guy and the nurse in Jersey.
All right.
Just stealing medication, like that just seems like a sick, like, oh, I'm just gonna let him writhe in pain or
Yeah.
die on the own.
Yep.
Now you're right. If they didn't die, if it was just a pain thing, that's better. Because both cases, the woman in India, people are dying in there. But I don't know. At least she had some bad, terrible reason to do it.
So you're saying
I guess
the
I'll
woman
say-
in India sucks the least?
Yes.
All right. It's interesting you say that. So, guys, just so you know, this was Miles. You think the Mahatma Gandhi sucks the worst? You think Mahatma Gandhi was at? Yeah, Ted.
Son of
I
a
set
bitch.
you up. Mahatma
Wait a
Gandhi. You think Mahatma Gandhi? That was the man. He was, as I said, he was shot and killed. He was the worst because he did deny his wife penicillin.
Douchebag, I believe, is what Miles called him.
You call Gandhi
douche, just
douchebag?
douche, no bag,
douche.
no
I
bag.
did
no
think
bad. Okay.
the middle one did sound. I was like, I just read this thing about Mother Teresa.
That was Mother Teresa, Ted.
You are kidding me.
The woman in India who basically pocketed a lot of money from hospices around the world, but no one could quite track down the money, and her hospices are run very shoddily. She's known as Mother Teresa. Yes. And then finally, Ted, maybe you have the best eye for this kind of thing because you said that this guy that's stealing the non-opioid, non-addictive, non-drug
Just seems
recreational.
sick.
It is.
It is. Because that particular guy is Charles Edmund Cullen, who confessed to 29 murders. They confirmed 40, but based on his experience, they believe that he murdered up to 400 people.
In the
As a
hospital?
through the hospital.
Through the hospital.
I feel like I did
Ted,
okay at this.
You did. I totally thought you would think he sucks the least
Other than the
because
fact that
of
you
the
said that
drugs.
Gandhi
I
is a
did.
terrible human being.
So, Miles, you're down on Gandhi.
Jesus.
I mean, and look, these are their stories, right? They are known for other things, but these are the stories. So Gandhi, known for other things, but that was his
no
deal.
wonder he was shot and killed.
Like, yeah, my wife died.
Jesus.
Penicillin, dude, he got malaria. He's like, give me the medication. Slept with his nieces to, quote unquote, test his celibacy. And like I said, we never got the result. That was Mahatma Gandhi. So the woman with the hospices around the world, taking money from dictators in other countries are like, man, don't take his money. They're going to want a favor. She said, no, I don't take that money. The assumption was that it went to the hospices. It did not. And no one knows where that money went. And look, she didn't live like she was rich, so who knows where the money went. But it wasn't going to the hospices. And yeah, Ted, you nailed it. The guy stealing the drugs the patients needed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it turns out he may have killed up to 400 people. Notorious serial killer here in the United States. So now you know. Mahatma Gandhi, Mother Teresa, and a serial killer. Yay! So,
just-
Ted, when you asked me earlier, hey, man, are you doing like the setup? I'm like, oh, dude, I totally forgot.
Yeah.
And I came in and told Mike. Ted, believe me, because he asked me directly, because you're talking about Diddy.
I
like giving to
want
charity
you to
and
talk
stuff.
about how, but I had never told you off air, like,
Yeah.
hey, you should use Diddy.
Yeah.
Because he donated a ton of money. Yeah. Right? Oh, man, I'm so glad I knew there was
Are you
something
happy about this?
sick and twisted.
You act, I mean,
It's just wrong. Why would
You're
you?
glad about the serial killer.
Well, I'm just glad I know people.
that he sucked the most.
Yeah,
Just
and I was
Ted's
like, I think
he's
that
the
guy sucks
worst.
the most. Like, there's no reasoning behind
He doesn't
that.
have one redeeming quality.
Like, he's just a sick dude.
All right. Debate continues on Who Sucks Less. If you like the Men's Room on Facebook or follow us on X and Instagram at Men's Room Live.
I'm waiting for that.
Coming up at 5:08, we're going to drink a toast with a shot of the day. You are listening to the Men's Room.